everybody doing?
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me interrupt your afternoon. The very first thing I want to say to this group of folks is it's an orientation. You don't have to train on a new piece of software and learn anything new necessarily, right? I want to introduce myself. So I'm Jeff McSpadden. My company is called Composure. We're a audio technology company that's working with the senior living industry to primarily focused on helping residents sleep better through a non-pharmacological means using sound that we've studied in clinical research and we've found to be very, very effective. So I'll sort of give you a little bit of broader context here for a second. I introduced myself, but just as a quick kind of background on myself, before I started the company, I actually worked for many years in the TV, film, and advertising industry as a composer. So I've been trained as a musician and creative, and usually find these days I'm about like a black sheep in most rooms that I enter. So happy to kind of wear that, but that's my primary background. And really what I want to do a deep dive on here is not so much my technology and so forth, but more on the problem we're looking to solve. So all of us, all humans, spend about a third of our lives sleeping. And it's that quality of that sleep that really regulates our health, both physically, neurologically, emotionally, and so on. And so, as you can probably all attest to, when you don't get a great night's sleep, you're not functioning very well the next day. And the opposite is also true, right? We generally feel pretty able when we do get some really good sleep. And one thing that we want to focus on very quickly here, just for the context of caring for individuals in this congregate living setting, is it's been well documented by a lot of different sleep and other sort of healthcare related research organizations that the number one cause of sleep disruption for older adults is noise. And so what do I mean by noise? I'll play you a quick sample. Let's see if the TV screen is going to play my sound. Very short sample that would probably sound very familiar to everybody here, right? Now, that's not necessarily typical of what it sounds like in overnight hours, but that is, the experience of living here 24/7 for residents, right? Other causes of sleep disruption for older adults is pretty much primarily just aging in general, right? So there are sleep graphs that show sort of the difference between young adults and older adults' sleeping patterns. And younger adults have these very slow sort of transitions between deep rest and light rest and wakefulness and so forth. And then you look at an older adult's chart and it's like they're having a heart attack. It's up and down all night, and it's not the kind of up and down always where they're out of bed and walking around and that kind of thing. It's just frequent moments of wakefulness where they're not getting that deep stage restorative sleep, right? And so taking a look at all these factors and really zeroing in on noise as being the number one source of disruption here, we've really kind of identified something that's key to being human, which is we're all wired for sound. And what do I mean by that is the parts of our brain, the structures of the brain that process what we hear and from our environment are some of the oldest structures. By the way, they're ones that are largely unaffected by the progression of dementia. So as all other functioning parts of the brain start to deteriorate or not function properly, the auditory processing is still fully functional, even late stage towards end of life. Matter of fact, I was talking to somebody the other day that it's been documented that the first two senses we have when we're still in utero, before birth, is first touch and sound. The last two to go are touch and sound. So it's a very, very powerful force. What we hear through that old structure of the brain really influences how we behave and how we feel, whether we're conscious of it or not, Quick little story. My mom, who just recently moved into independent living, she's used to living in a house, not in a sort of apartment type of environment. They were putting in new carpeting just on the floor above her, and they were hammering all day, and it was sending her out of her skin. She couldn't deal with it, you know. She's just not used to it, and she recognized it was the sound, but really being able to regulate her feelings around it was not possible. So it was very deep. But as you can see here, just sort of from the, I'll get out of the way. The way our nervous system is wired is you can hear sounds that will activate your fight or flight response, kind of put you in that, you know, what they call like stepping your foot on the gas kind of response, or calming sounds that will actually do the opposite. It'll actually take your foot off the gas and slow your system down, really calm you. And that is universal. It doesn't matter what age, what background, and pretty universal even within different diagnoses, clinical diagnoses. So we have, as a company, we've created a system called Soundblanket, which is has been installed here today, and over the past several months with the team here. And what it is it's a turnkey solution using a lot of different sort of components, which I'll explain in a moment, that delivers personalized sounds per resident in their room to help them sleep at night. And we do this, you know, as I kicked off before, you don't have to learn to train, you're not training on a new piece of tech here. It's automatic and remotely monitored and remotely managed, so it just comes on at night per individual. And no one has to really remember to do anything on a nightly basis. I thought that would get it true. So at the core of what Soundblanket is a specially crafted and curated sequence of sound that we've created to support the entire sleep cycle. So some of the, as we've been discussing today, some of the three biggest challenges that people experience with sleep is, especially in related to you know, caring for those living with dementia, right? Recognizing when bedtime is, so being able to make that transition is difficult. Another problem is falling asleep at all. Like, you know, you can maybe get to bed fine, but you know, drifting off to sleep is a challenge. And then the third one is getting good sleep through the night. You know, for residents that you're caring for, I'm sure you can recognize that can be a challenge for a lot of them. You know, there is a stat, there's studies that indicate 70% of those living with dementia in congregate living do not get proper amounts of sleep. And there's another study that said it's actually 90%. So whether you recognize your residents, you know, are having difficulty with that or not, we can talk a little bit more about what those indicators are, but it's not always going to be the obvious up and wandering, okay? So this sound sequence actually works to address those three key problems with sleep. What it is it's a timed execution of sound. So at a particular time for each resident, whatever matches their circadian rhythms and their bedtime schedule, the sound will slowly come on in the speaker, and it has a musical introduction that's roughly 20 minutes long, that is meant to help cue that transition to bedtime, and also just create a calming environment to fall asleep in. And after that 20-minute period, it slowly transitions to a frequency approach we call pink noise. It's actually our special blend of different sounds, but pink noise is the main ingredient there. And what that does is two things very, very well. One, it helps to cover all those distracting sounds that can wake somebody up out of their sleep. So, and the way that works is, I played that noise sample before, you know. At night, typically what happens is you'll have moments of relative quiet, interrupted by moments of you know, spikes of activity or distraction or what have you, right?
Like a radio call, those types of things outside somebody's doorway. It's good for us because, you know, we're communicating with each other, and it might wake that person up from sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Doors opening and closing, phones ringing, whatever you have. This normal shared living, right, that we're encountering. So what happens is you've got these quiet moments and you've got these spikes of activity. When you introduce this peak noise frequency in the bedroom, it actually makes the loud not so loud and the quiet not so quiet. So to the sleeping brain, it kind of registers as all the same. And so we don't have those arousing moments of activity that really get you out of your sleep. So that is the primary, what we call the main ingredient in the sound sequence, is this pink noise approach. The reason we put music on the front of it is really because, we think of it sort of like cough medicine. Brian's heard me say this before, but if you got a bad cough and you go to the pharmacy, you'll see that each bottle has the same active ingredient in it, but they flavor it in a few different flavors to sort of make it palatable to get that ingredient in. So the music is like our flavors. And then that active ingredient is really what helps sustain better sleep through the night. It's that active, the pink noise. And so that continues on either 6, 7, or 8 hours, whatever is best for that individual. And then will fade out very gently to silence in the morning so that they can wake up naturally. Or if they use an alarm clock or whatever they're used to waking up from, they can. And so here's the part that you'll love. So we said, okay, the sound it works. We've studied it. I'll talk a little bit about our research on this briefly. But it doesn't mean a thing if you can't get it into everyone's room in a way that's reliable and helpful and doesn't get in your way, right? So we essentially put together this turnkey solution that includes cloud computing. It includes a little local server device. It's like a mini brain, a little computer that we've installed down here. And then in each room is a networked speaker. So that means that we can deliver the right sound at the right time and at the right volume setting per individual in their room. So in room 1, they can get something at 9 o'clock if that's when they go to bed. They can play, that appropriate version at the right volume, so on and so forth. So each room gets it tailored to them, right? Any questions so far about any of this?
I guess I'm just curious about this. Kind of might relate to like some residents love to have their TV on while they're winding down and like in bed, specifically like 9 to even like 10:30 sometimes.
Right.
Does that mean that like the sound would be taken that into account so that it could be on like during TV time?
So we don't sense the environment yet to respond to it appropriately. That's kind of somewhere we're going with the product. But I would say, like in that case, they like to fall asleep to having the TV on?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about one of our residents. I think she might even have this in her room now. 4113. She's likes to watch her shows until she gets into bed, and then she'll usually, fall asleep. And right before she falls asleep, she turns it off.
So this is a great opportunity to talk about the way in which you evaluate what time is appropriate for them, what selection, all of that. Okay, so usually we found that people fall into 2 buckets. The third bucket is something we all experience, which is it's hard to stay asleep through the night, right? So that's something we'll talk about next. But out of the 2 buckets, does this individual, this resident, have trouble recognizing or transitioning to bedtime? Like knowing it's time for bed. Do they need help with that? Could it be helpful to you to have something that helps them do that, right? If that's the trouble, then I would say, let's start the playback of Soundblanket for them, to sort of spur on that transition. And it could be like, hey, I know typically as a care member, I'm going into this individual's room around 8:30, so I'll start this at 7:45. So it's already starting to play, and then I come in, and then the whole picture comes together over time in association.
And if they are wanting to watch TV, and then they start to kind of cycle out of that around 10:30, well, 10:30 might be when you start this.
Exactly.
Yeah, she has a hard time staying asleep.
Yeah.
Not actually going.
Yeah.
So getting to bed and falling asleep is not an issue for her. It's more
It's
staying asleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
To have a good night's rest.
But this is good, and the feedback from you guys is really, really important, because you know these cycles better than we do.
Yeah.
And so as we begin to phase this in, we're not gonna start with 62 beds, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna start with a few at a time. we are gonna be asking you what time they usually go to bed, what's their process. And then that's gonna allow us to be able to customize this to the best of our ability. And how does this impact you, right? So if you have somebody that gets up 5 times a night, and we implement this, and now they're getting up twice a night, that's good. That's gonna be good for them, because they're gonna be getting a more restful sleep. And it's good for you, because you're not having to redirect and do all those types of things. And in terms of the impact on the quality of life of that resident, when they get up in the morning, we all know, when you don't get a good night's sleep, he kind of talked about it a little bit. You might be a little grumpy. What is that? That's a behavior. Could be a behavior, right? You might not be paying attention as much to what's going on around you, which could lead to falls, right? And also, you know, we're hoping also, in addition to maybe impacting in a positive way falls, impacting in a positive way behaviors, also maybe they won't need as many medications. And if you are refreshed and you are engaged with people around you, more active in socializing with you guys and with their neighbors, more active in activities, their quality of life at this last stage of their life can be better, can be more fruitful for them. And that's the idea. So it really helps you in the job that you do. It helps them too. You know, so it's exciting, the potential. And as we implement this, we're gonna be tracking. So we're gonna be tracking data. We're gonna be tracking falls and behaviors and that kind of stuff. But we also wanna hear from you anecdotally. You know, Mr. Smith, you know, he does seem to be doing better. This has been going on for a month. We have this in place for a month. He does seem to be sleeping better. Or, you know, he didn't get up at all last night. And so those types of things can be really, really beneficial for us to be able to gauge the impact of this. And for us to get feedback on how we might tweak it. We might tweak their cycle. We might tweak the preemptive music that's played, because there's a few options there. But you guys are really important in being able to give us that feedback.
Yeah, and speaking of tweaking, it's sort of, you know, the other thing to be aware of when people are kind of going through the stages of and progression of dementia, there is sometimes that tendency to turn your days upside down, you know, sleeping during the day and so forth. And this is an opportunity where, you know, if you can sort of see a pattern change, you can preempt that, you know, and start playing back this Soundblanket a little bit earlier maybe, or just finding that sweet spot that might really help them ease off to sleep and get a good night's rest. Because we really saw, you know, and look, you don't have to take my word for it. There is a published study that points to the efficacy of what we do specifically. There's lots of other evidence that talks about how sound impacts people and, you know, so on and so forth. But we did conduct a clinical research study with our friends at Garden Spot Communities in PA. We used the Center for Health Design, which is an amazing research organization, to do that research. And here's the thing, we kind of all were a little bit shocked with the results that we got. We reached 2 statistically significant results. That means that it's a 99% fact that it was just our sounds that produced these outcomes. So we saw a reduction in daytime drowsiness. Makes sense. People slept better at night. They're more active and engaged and alert during the day. And then cooperation with care is something that was what that item was called, but really what it meant was greater independence. So people that slept better had, even in advanced stage dementia, had far greater cognition, ability to follow instruction, greater independence. And to the point that Brian was making, that relieves some of the pressure on you guys, right?
Let me stop right
Yeah.
I know that we're running a little bit on time here.
Yeah.
So, do you want to kind of demonstrate what the sound is?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we can let them loose on the floor.
Absolutely, absolutely. One quick thing, and then I'll do that, is we saw over 30 measures improve for residents, but we also saw things improve for the staff during the study. So we saw a reduced burnout ratio. We saw less absenteeism. We saw less turnover and less disassociation and all of those things. So it's not, we all want to serve the community, and that includes you guys. Right?
Amen.
So let me play, bear with me for 1 second, because I was gonna do this one way, and now I'm thinking it would be more expedient to do it here. So let me play the samples of what this sounds like. So I talked about the cueing and calming portion is musical. Those come in 3 different flavors, if you will. One's called atmospheric, evening prayer, and log cabin. So let me play, these are very short samples. This is atmospheric. It's distorting a little bit out of the TV, but you get it. Oops. This is what evening prayer sounds like. Wow, that is loud.
We know that's what you do not mean it. That sounds horrible.
Yeah, it's distorted quite a
Distorted
lot.
on the,
But it's very gentle piano,
Yeah.
take my word for that.
yeah.
And then finally, log cabin. And the reason we're playing these is because it'll help you in sort of making a determination what's appropriate for each resident. Hold on a second. Let's get this going. So you get a quick idea, right?
We like log cabin and prayer.
Yeah.
So the speakers in the rooms, of course, are much higher quality than what you're listening to.
They look like that, right? Yep.
We listened to it a little bit earlier in the rooms, and it was really
It's
nice.
going in 4102 right now.
Do you have an example of pink noise?
Yes, I'm gonna play that right
It is?
now. So pink noise is the part that it really does the sound masking, which is officially called sound masking approach, covering those distracting noises, and our version of pink noise sounds like this.
Kind of like a fan.
Yeah. It's got a little motor hum, a little electrical hum, because we found that pink noise as a raw frequency is a little unpleasant.
Mhm.
It's a little unfamiliar, but we wanted to blend some things in there that really felt like, oh, well, that's my air conditioner, or that's my, so it's just a little bit easier to kind of, again, get that main ingredient, actively working.
So in 4102, when we break up from here,
Yeah.
if you want to restart it with maybe the log cabin, and then people can just during your shift just kind of go in there and listen to it.
That'd be great, yeah, I can absolutely do that. So, so that's essentially it. There's a dashboard here that there's only one active right now, 4102, as we talked about. But essentially, that's what it looks like. It's the theme, it's the start time, and it's the status of the speaker, whether the sound is playing in there or whatever. There's also a little speaker icon there that if you touch that, you can adjust volume settings there. Which is, the volume is a really key thing. You want to make sure it's a comfortable volume especially for that purpose of falling asleep.
Yeah, and not just what you're hearing at the doorway when you go in the room. You hear that and get feedback from the resident on what works.
Yeah.
It's a process for sure.
Well, yeah, there's an initial setup process,
Mhm.
but then once you get that dialed in, there's no more process. It just works.
And we can tweak it as we need to.
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
What about, let's say this is going and the resident's like, that's just not helping me at the moment. Is
Yeah.
there a way that we're gonna be able to turn it
Yeah.
off for them in the
There's
moment?
gonna be access for leadership on
Okay.
each shift, to be able to go in there and turn it off if they need to.
Yeah, and that's a click of a button here on the screen. You'll see I'm clicking this little checkbox for that room, and you can either stop or play depending on what status it's in.
Yep, so absolutely.
So you could even turn it on at nap time too.
It's
No.
possible, but it's really meant to be a 6,
Overnight.
8, 7,
Yeah.
8 hour process.
You
For
want
that
to
deep-
good sleep.
That REM sleep.
Not during the day when they should be awake. I mean, it kind of made me want to take a nap, so maybe.
That's 6 hours.
And go find me a two.
And also, when you think about, you know, kind of the target audience for this, it's for those individuals that are pretty active and up and about and doing. But also, you know, for people who are very demented, end-stage dementia, we don't know what they're perceiving. We don't know how they're sleeping. And so this can be beneficial for them, even if we can't see that impact. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so, so there's gonna be a whole lot of things that we're gonna learn together about this, and I know that we're gonna be working with Jeff on, how to do things moving forward, so.
Okay, yeah.
It's an exciting project, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, and I'm here, the rest of the day, I'm here tomorrow, potentially, we're gonna see what the
Yeah, we'll see
storm
what the
holds.
storm does.
Yeah, but, I'm
Come
here,
on in with the rest of us.
yeah.
We'll put you to work.
I'll get a sleeping bag, I'll just be on the
Exactly.
floor in here, yeah. But I so appreciate you sharing your time with me. Again, you know, if we do our job right, this is designed to actually make your lives a whole lot easier each night and each day.
Amen.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.